Richard, I'm excited to have you here in my first series of podcasts. Welcome to Mayfair.
Thank you very much, Doug. Very nice to be here too.
Yeah.
Very exclusive room you've got here.
Yeah, one of the old Duke of Westminster boardrooms.
Beautiful.
Really good. Thank you for coming this way. Richard, you're a research and development tax specialist and consultant.
Indeed I am.
Your business is ZLX, Business Solutions, and I'm going to ask you a few questions about R&D tax credits, and about ZLX and the different business services you have today. But I want to just find out a few little things about your past. But before I start, introvert or extrovert?
I think I'm definitely an extrovert. It has to be said, I do enjoy a good party. I enjoy socializing, and communicating with people is a fun part of my life, so I would say extrovert.
Richard, you've hit the nail on the head. I can vouch for what you've said.
Okay.
We've worked together it's over a year now. We've had some good fun along the way, and for that I thank you. It hasn't just been hard slog. You've had great progression this year, but we've had some fun along the way. That leads me into it. Ale or lager?
So ale.
Or lager?
Yeah. Ale. Well, depends on the weather, actually.
Okay.
If it's a nice hot day, a good pint of lager is lovely.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, I'm an ale man.
He seldom says no. Richard, you've had a great career in IT and software and marketing, and what's the one lesson, before you tell us about your past, what's the one lesson that you think everyone should learn at some point in your life?
I think probably I would say that the essence of business is in the detail. Get into the detail and you will find the nuggets of gold. And there is so much detail in virtually every topic that you come across. So for me personally, I find that the detail is where the opportunities lie. And in business, that's what you're looking for, the opportunities.
Thank you. I can vouch for that. Watching you, you are the proverbial details man. Yeah. Rich, if you could go back and give your 18-year-old self, 18-year-old Richard, first of all, was he good or naughty?
A good halfway house, I would say. I had my bad days and I had my good days.
So you were adventurous?
I was adventurous, yeah.
Okay.
A healthy halfway house.
Okay, sounds good. So if you could give that young 18-year-old Richard a sound piece of advice, what would it be today?
Looking back from where I am today, it would be aim high. Aim high. It's a critical piece of information, and I think most of us don't understand it. And what I mean by that is that if you use your mind, and that's another bit of information what I've given myself, everything that you want to achieve is in front of you. So that would be my piece of advice.
And dream big, plan well.
Plan well,
execute
and
better.
Use this, because this has the ticket to everything.
Yeah. Well, it seems to have definitely worked for you. You've had an outstanding career and an exciting one too. And just watching what you've achieved in the R&D tax industry, I mean, that's been wonderful. I look at some of these huge institutions, very large football clubs that you've given huge cash injections through their R&D tax credits, not just the smaller businesses, but some really big ones too. Before we get into R&D, can you just give us a bit of your background, Richard?
Yeah, sure. So most of my life was spent in the IT industry, 25 to 30 years, I guess. I worked for a variety of companies, from startups all the way through to major US corporations, multi-billion dollar corporations. Probably about, over those 30 years, probably about 7 different organizations.
And as you said, it's all been in marketing and
all on the
software.
On the commercial side.
Okay, so you have experience in matters such as crossing the chasm.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So you're at home with the
Those
early
concepts.
adopters and the early main markets, and
indeed, I've lived it, I've experienced
You've been
it.
there,
I know exactly what's involved in that. Although there's always more to learn, but and every situation is slightly different. But there's a lot of familiarity between every business that tries to cross that chasm.
Yeah.
So yes, I've seen all of that, and not only have I done it, but I've worked with clients going through that process as well. And I think what I've always found in business is once you've got a bit of experience, giving of that experience to the people that you're working with will take you a long way.
Givers gain.
Givers gain, absolutely right.
Yeah.
So if you can help people with new thinking or ideas or methodologies that improve their opportunities, then chances are they're going to come back to you for more.
Fantastic. So where did the R&D come in? Why ZLX Business Solutions? What can you tell us, Richard?
So I spent, as I said, I spent all this time in the IT industry, and then I moved on and actually ran my own company for about 7 years, which worked in the environmental space. It was a bit of a combination of IT with environmental products, so reducing energy consumption in industry. And one of the things that I discovered across the entire period, starting with the big boys, was that they were doing a lot of research, and I was wondering how on earth they could be possibly funding this research.
Yeah.
So I spoke to them over time, and early on it was the big boys, and they were gaining these R&D tax credits, and I got more and more interested in them, particularly when I discovered that companies more of my size were actually getting these tax credits as well. So I had a lot of people that I knew who were doing this, so I started to investigate it properly myself, and
over time you became the expert.
over time I learned quite a lot about it, and then I started, a couple of my colleagues actually moved into ZLX and wanted me to come and join them, and there was a space in my career where I thought, this would be the right sort of thing for me to be doing next, because it actually helps businesses. It's good for the economy, and those are the things that appeal to me. So that's where I ended up.
So perhaps for those of us that don't really know what R&D tax credits are, could you just tell us what they are?
Certainly. The government in about 2000 decided that their major competitors were using our research and development tax credits. In other words, giving companies that engaged in research and development tax credits for doing that research and development, because they're taking on a significant cost. Now, they're not paying them everything that that they spend, but they are making a contribution and making it easier for them. And so they began to introduce that into the UK. And
how big is this? What sort of money does the government budget?
Well, we're talking about many billions of dollars, of pounds, that are set aside. It's something like 6 billion set aside for research and development tax credits.
Wow.
per year.
Yeah.
And it's those tax credits are taken up by all sorts of companies, ranging now from the very big ones to the very small ones.
Okay.
And the reason for that is because after about 10 years of this scheme, where the big boys had all collected their money because they had the accountants and the resources to do it, the government recognised that the opportunity was, really in the smaller size
So there's
companies.
a lot of people out there leaving money on the boardroom table.
Absolutely right.
So those are the
there's
people
plenty.
that should be making contact with
Yes.
Richard Roy.
Indeed. And the reason that they should look for a professional in this space is because most people, when they turn to R&D tax credits, tend to go to their traditional sources of financial guidance, which would be potentially an accountant or
Bookkeeper, accountant.
or bookkeeper or their own internal financial director or whatever. And the challenge with that is that these guys don't always have the day-to-day experience of dealing with the R&D tax credit system. So therefore, they naturally err on the side of caution. And when they make their claims, they tend to be cautious, first of all, about the types of projects that they will make claims for. So they tend to leave on the table projects that they could be claiming for, but they don't really know, so they're not going to do it.
So it pays to get an R&D tax specialist.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Not just your FD or your accountant.
Yes, correct. And the next thing is they don't claim for all of the things that could be claimed for within those projects.
Okay.
And then on top of that, they then say, well, now we're going to take our expenses that we've received for this project and make a claim for it, but we're going to err on the side of caution again in how much we claim for it. Because, and the only reason is because they don't understand the rules properly. They're not intimate with the rules.
So, Richard, do you have a success factor that you aim to achieve? How successful are you in getting these claims through?
I'm very happy to say that we are 40% above the national average in the UK in terms of our claim values. So we're
40%. That's massive.
It is, and you can be talking. Some companies are claiming hundreds of thousands of pounds. So it can.
So 40% of hundreds of thousands of pounds,
indeed,
is substantial money in anyone's language.
In anyone's language, indeed.
Yeah. So you spoke about being a details man. Details and R&D tax credits. I'm sure that those go hand in hand.
Yeah. I think one of the exciting things about working in that space continuously is you get to see where people from all sorts of different businesses are making their claims.
Okay.
And what typically happens is you will see something occur, in one market, and you'll be able to think, actually, that applies over here. Yeah. Whereas potentially nobody over here has ever thought about that. That's a classic area. So I'll give you an example of that. And we did some work with a pharmaceutical company who you would have said, well, they're claiming R&D. And they did claim R&D tax credits on an industrial scale. Yeah. And they said, we know all about this. We've got this completely covered. Well, we went in and talked to them about it. And indeed, where they were doing R&D on their drugs and etc., yes, they were very efficient and they had it completely covered. But where they were weak was outside of that area, where they were doing research and development to improve their internal IT systems or their standards, reaching certain standards within the industry, etc. So they were leaving every year hundreds of thousands of pounds on the table.
And you said you can go back 1 year, 2 years?
You can go back to two prior tax years. So you can claim for 2 prior tax years.
So potentially speaking, somebody could get a big cash injection, a big chunk of money coming in by going back 2 years.
Absolutely right. Yeah. The one small challenge with that is once you have made a claim, that's pretty well it. You can't go back and say, I didn't quite get that right.
All right. Yeah. So it's all or nothing. Get it right.
It isn't entirely true, but virtually, it'll be very difficult if you made a claim to go back.
So, Richard, you said that ZLX has a success rate that is 40% better than the industry standard. On average. What is your USP? Why do people come to Richard Roy?
I think it's because, as I said, we're doing this day in, day out. So we deal with a range of companies. We understand all of these different... Across multiple industries. Sports clubs, architects, farmers, dental practices, farmers, you name it. We deal with a wide range of companies. Now we do have specialisms. We are better in certain areas or we've got more experience in certain areas than others. But
what's your perfect avatar? Who are the clients that you're looking for? Who of our listeners today should contact Richard Roy?
So any business that is would classify them as a small to medium-sized business in any industry that is not claiming R&D tax credits, it is well worth having a conversation with us. Indeed, if you're not happy with the claims that you're making, contact us as well, because I'm sure that we can help you to find any improvement that could be made to those tax credits.
Great. So could you perhaps tell us about some specific sectors, Richard?
Sure, yeah. I mean, one of the sectors that we might look at is architecture, or the building industry as a whole.
Yeah.
Most architects don't feel that they have any R&D tax credit claim whatsoever, but actually it's completely untrue. As long as they're a limited company and they're responsible for UK corporation tax, then the chances are they will have an R&D tax claim. And it would typically lie in areas, there is an architectural process from the RIBA.
Sure.
And it's stages 3 to 5, which
there's some more detail coming in here, Richard.
Absolutely. We typically find that there's opportunities in there.
Yeah.
So anything from design work to get round particular problems with wind or with water, etc. That can all come into it.
Now, Richard, I've heard you saying that you've been working with some seriously large football clubs and some smaller football clubs. What is it that you do for football clubs? Is there money? Do they get money back when you work with them?
Football clubs are great. Have a great claim for R&D tax credits.
Okay.
Typically, they will be working with their athletes to do some kind of improvement program, some kind of health program, injury prevention schemes. They're looking at the media facilities for their clubs. They're looking at pitch improvements, etc., etc. As long as they're doing something unique in this area, they typically have a claim. And the number of people that get involved, and it can be players as well, so you can imagine some big football clubs, then all of that can come into scope for an R&D tax credit claim.
We've been working together for well over a year now, Rich, and hearing some of the amounts and quantums of the claims that you mention around football clubs, it's mind-boggling.
Yeah.
So farmers, I've heard you talk about the farmers before. How are you getting credits for the farmers?
Well, there's a variety of areas in farming. I mean, people are looking at ways to make feed go further or improve the feed quality for their stock, get more yield from their crops, improve their equipment that they're using to get better results from the land, whether it be more data, taking more data from the land. All of these things and many more would fall into scope.
You've mentioned the property industry. Was that because of the architects, or is there something else in the property industry?
Well, there are a variety of players in the property industry, and several of those players will have claims in that space. So, architects obviously, but builders themselves often start to think about, how can we do things?
How they make their processes better as they go.
Yeah, indeed. Right. So I'll give you a quick example of that. We had one construction company who was looking at how to do piling more efficiently. Now, piling, if you don't know, is where you pump the ground full of concrete. Yeah. And you have to, generally people will just come along and they'll go, well, what's the space that needs to be filled to stabilise it? And they'll just shove concrete down till it's stabilised. Well, that's both ecologically unfriendly, but it's also very expensive because concrete is very expensive. Yes. So they had a project to look at how they could reduce the amount of concrete that they had to use under the ground. And all of that project came into scope. So they had a very substantial claim from that.
That's great. Well, Richard, it certainly sounds like, if people are a small or medium enterprise, that they should be getting hold of you. Where can business owners or financial directors get hold of you online? Where can people find Richard Roy?
So I do have my own personal website, which is richardroy.co.uk.
Great, richardroy.co.uk.
Yeah.
And LinkedIn, I suppose.
And LinkedIn is, yes, is a very popular method for people to contact me, and I do respond to all of those. So
great. Well, Richard, it's been great having you on.
It's been great to be here, Doug.
But one question before you go. What's the one question that you wish that I'd asked you and I haven't, and what would your answer have been?
So I think, what would the perfect client relationship be? So the question.
The perfect client relationship be?
Yes.
That's a thinking man's question.
Yeah. And my answer to it would be a relationship with a client that was friendly, but also went into the detail, looked to work as a team to achieve the best outcome for that particular client on a mutual good relationship basis, because these relationships last for years, actually. Sure. So that would be my perfect client relationship.
Well, Richard, I hope you're talking about our relationship of business owner, business coach.
You're a good example.
Yeah, thank you. On that note, I'm going to say thank you for joining us. It's been good having you with us today, and we'll have you back sometime. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you very much, Doug.
Cheerio.
Cheers.